A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I welcome you to another session of my course Globalization and Development. Today's lecture will be divided in two parts. In the first part, I will discuss global culture and three important approaches to the study of global culture, which include cultural differentialism, cultural convergence, and cultural imperialism. The second part will cover cultural flows, and that will include the McDonaldization of society and the landscapes, different global landscapes, and how they are shaping and affecting the global culture. The question I want to raise here is that what is global culture? What is it that represents most the global culture? If you look at the structure and organization of the globalization, you will find that global culture is manifested on different levels. It is manifested on the most significant manifestation of the global culture is economic. Then it is followed by political expression, and then finally that political expression shapes the cultural dimension of the globalization or the global culture. Now, what is the most fundamental form of economic dimension of global culture? It is simply the buying and the selling of things. Simply buying and selling of things. That is the economic dimension of global culture. And now when I say thingness is applied even to human beings. In order to survive in the competitive and market driven global culture, you should either be in a position of selling or in a position of buying. And what is left in between that has no significance. If you can be a good seller, you will be the beneficiary of the economic logic of the globalization. And if you are a very good buyer, you will be the beneficiary of this economic logic of globalization, which means simply that global culture exemplifies marketization, it exemplifies competition, it exemplifies money making, it exemplifies maximization of profit. So, all these logics of economic logics of globalization are justified because they create a so-called liberal economic environment in the entire world. And if you can survive in this liberal economic environment, you are perfectly allowed to exist and perfectly allowed to continue with your life. But if you cannot withstand the onslaughts of marketization, of competition, of money making, of maximization of profit, you cannot survive and exist as a viable, as a sustainable entity. So, the very important and very significant and the primary feature of global culture is marketization. Marketization of persons, marketization of products, marketization of goods, marketization of services, marketization of knowledge, skill, whatever it is. Because the global culture, epistemologically speaking, the metaphysically speaking, global culture revolves around the concept of measuring and quantifying, measurement and quantification. If you can measure and if you can quantify your skill, if you can bring your knowledge on a scale, it will be sold. If you can measure your quantify your skill on a certain scale, it will be sold in the market of ideas. So, you find markets everywhere, markets of bodies, markets of ideas, markets of entertainment, markets of knowledge, markets of leadership. It is a free market everywhere. Now, we come to the next feature, important characteristic of global culture, and that is the political, its political form. Its primary form is economic. You should keep that in mind, that the most fundamental form of global culture is its economic expression, its economic context, because it is the economic and that is the neoliberal economic philosophy, neoliberal economic outlook throughout the world, and it is applied throughout the world by its most powerful institutions. Then that economic logic of free market and liberal economics, that goes on shaping the political behavior of states and nations and individuals. All political dealings, all political exchanges are based on the premise of free market economy. If you can, have a position of bargaining, for example, your state or your nation has a place, it has fortunate or unfortunate a certain geostrategic location. The global north will come to your help, will come to invest in you, will pour, the money will pour into your country, into your state, into your nation. And you will become significant. So, the political dimension is shaped by the economic dimension. Now, how the states and nations will be run and governed, that is also shaped by the political logic of the global culture, and that logic emphasizes that throughout the world there should be system of liberal democracy. And now you find everywhere in Asia, particularly in Asia and Africa, developing nations of the world, everybody is lined up, queued up, and they are casting votes and they are electing their so-called elected governments. One way or another, there are some form of democratic governments. And in countries, in certain countries of Middle East, who are without democracies because they are very rich, they have money. And money, as I told you, is the fundamental character of global culture. Global culture is essentially a money-driven culture, money-oriented culture. You can say it's a global culture is a money-oriented culture. It's a maximization of profit culture. So, because Arabs have a lot of money, they have petro money, though they, are exempted from democracy and they are welcome. They are part of the G20, they are part of other important bilateral donor agencies and institutions, economic institutions. So, political governance is another indicator of global culture. What kind of political governance is available in a particular nation or in a particular state? Then this is followed by the cultural globalization, or the culture, how the local cultures are shaped by the broader free marketing culture, marketed culture of the world. How the cultures are packaged and commodified and then sold, to the whole world. If you can package and if you can commodify your culture product, you can sell it throughout the world. You can sell it throughout the world. Now you find that delicacies from the south, cuisines, foods, similarly dresses, they have been packaged and commodified in such a way that they are sold and they are presented and they are catwalked in the western capitals, in the North American cities, New York, Milan. There are marketing events, big events in which they are presented and sold. So, the cultural identity of different states and societies is also shaped by the economic logic of the global culture. So, these are the three important aspects, you can say, of the global culture, which you can focus and analyze. Now, I will briefly touch upon different approaches to the study of global culture, and as I referred earlier, that the number one approach is a theoretical perspective is cultural differentialism. Cultural differentialism proposes that each culture, each human culture is unique and different from the other human culture. For example, Pakistani culture is different from the American culture. American culture is different from the Pakistani culture. American culture is different from the Indian culture. Indian culture is different from the Pakistani. Japanese are different from the Pakistani culture. Every human culture, the Chinese culture is different from the American culture. Every human culture is different from the other human culture, and it is very difficult to develop a common global culture. If you look at one particular culture, you will find that they have a unique worldview, they have a unique dressing style, that they have a unique language, that they have a unique system of social and cultural exchanges, that they have certain unique mannerisms and etiquettes, which other culture cannot understand and appreciate. You can say that every culture promotes and cherishes its own tastes, its own likes and dislikes. So, the cultural differentialism asserts that the taste of every culture is different from the taste of another culture. It cannot be, there is no common ground between different cultures, and all efforts to develop a transcultural or cross-cultural understanding, they are useless, because cultures are inherently diametrically opposite to each other, and they tend to gravitate on their own centers and on their own worldviews, come what may. Whatever force you apply, a culture will try to galvanize and try to concentrate on its core values, on its core assumptions. Now, the core assumptions and core values of Indian culture are different from the American culture. American core values and American core assumptions are different from the Indian culture. Pakistani core values and cultural practices are different from the American core values and assumptions. So, according to this paradigm, this approach, it is very difficult to bring together the diverse and different, cultural systems into one global cultural system. There might be overlappings, there might be certain commonalities because of the overarching dominance of economic logic of global exchanges. People might follow certain common, for example, English language is understood and spoken almost throughout the world. It is a language of exchange and language of business and trade and commerce. But at the core of cultural behavior, all cultures retain their own identities. Now we move to the next approach or next theoretical perspective, that is cultural convergence. There are sociologists and there are anthropologists who claim that due to free flow of cultural information, cultural knowledge and cultural products from one part of the world to another part of the world, there are points in which global and the local is converging, or in which multiple cultures and multiple worldviews are converging on certain common things. For example, what is, as I told you, it's a market economy. The economic logic is the most dominant and most prevalent form of global culture. Its proof is the dollarization of economy, dollarization of the world trade and goods and services. It takes place in dollar. Your economic performance is measured, your economic outcome is measured on the basis of your ability to produce and create dollars. So, dollarization, you can say, is a point of convergence. Now, if you come to the ethical and the moral side, you will find that there is a tendency towards anti-religious, and you find a sort of global paganism and global shamanism and sort of global, atheism dominating different, forums and discussion platforms. It is essentially anti-material, anti-spiritual. That is another point of convergence. Throughout the world, you will find people attacking religious beliefs, people attacking religion, people attacking the traditional values, set of values, traditional way of life, traditional way of social and economic exchanges, traditional way of living is questioned and is ridiculed in certain circumstances. So, you can see this is there are common features. Dollarization followed by paganization, that is a common feature of global culture. Then you find another important common feature of where you find the cultural, and that is commodification. Bodies are commodified, fashion is commodified, it exists on its own. A cultural taste, a cultural activity, a cultural action is materialized, it is transformed into a commodity, into a product. As I discussed, look at this mobile, look at this smartphone, this mobile phone, it is a commodity. It has no metaphysical or theological, or you can say epistemological significance. It is a formless form, you can say. It in fact represents the global culture, technological, technologization of the world. Now, you can say that now this exists as information is generated from this mobile, knowledge is generated, skill is generated, exchanges are produced, you can do business, whatever you like. So, I meant to say that commodity signifies the global culture. If you can translate your idea into some form, tangible material form, you can then that idea or that material form can be sold. You will often find that trainer of soft skills or this software for for this activity, this program for this activity. So, these are the soft skills. They are then commodified into the form of a program. Even if you go to the internet, you will find meditation packages. People are selling meditational programs, people are selling transactional analysis. Now, transactional analysis is a psychological technique. To understand transactional analysis is a psychological technique to understand the human relationship with another human being. But the feature of that transaction analysis have been programmed in such a way using artificial intelligence, using analytics and logarithms, that anybody can apply it. By putting your personal information and data into the program, you can interpret the personality type. You can find out that in which state you are either are you in a parent mode, or you are a sibling mode, which mode you are. So, even soft skills, when they are commodified, when they are packaged into a software program, they are sold. A meditation, you will find websites and places, marketplaces on the internet, e-commerce places, where meditation programs are sold. How you can start the meditation, and then what are the stages of meditation. Similarly, you will find places in which yoga is, which is a skill, is you are taught and how you can master this. You will find places in which Islamic spirituality is being sold, program, Sufism is being sold. Evangelism, Christian evangelism is being sold. Hindu yogis and sadhus, they are selling their products on the religion. How to become calm, and how to become quiet, and how to become mindful. Similarly, global, Islamic mystics and spiritualists based in America, UK, they are selling Islamic Sufism, packaging it, labeling it, and selling it as a recipe of soul satisfaction and mental peace. So, you see what the global, there are convergences. What the global culture does is that it colonizes the local spaces, it colonizes the local mental constructs, it colonizes the local ideas, it colonizes and controls and dominates the cuisines and the tastes and the poetry and the literature and the histories of the people, and picks up which is useful and which legitimizes the dominance of the global cultural elite, the global political elite, the global hegemonies. That is it. Now we come to the next and third theoretical framework, and that is the cultural imperialism. Cultural imperialism, the word imperialism shows that it is global culture is another form of Americanization. Simple thesis that American values, American economic values, American political values, economic, cultural and social values are the yardstick of measuring all other values. And the more you are Americanized in your outlook, in your worldview, the more you are globally acceptable. So, it is a cultural imperialism. wherever America is going, whichever country it has invaded, wherever it tries to democratize, it tries to enhance the democratization of that society, and with that democratization of society, it tries to create liberalization, deregulation, an environment for foreign direct investment, an environment in which paganism and anti-religious sentiments are promoted. But the other interpretation of cultural imperialism is that different cultures are at conflict and at struggle with each other. Although the Americans are trying to dominate the world, but there are also other cultures and other civilizations. And in this respect, I would like to mention Samuel Huntington, an American political scientist who wrote this very famous book, The Clash of Civilization and the Making and Coming of the New World Order in 1993. And you will just recall and remember that it is during this period that the first American invasion of the Gulf started in 1990. The first George Bush Senior, he led a formal invasion of Kuwait and Iraq. They didn't at that time, they didn't enter Iraq, but they did invade in Kuwait, and they, then the American forces, they established their own stations there. So, it is not ironic, and it is during this period that Samuel Huntington wrote this book, Clash. According to Huntington, civilization is the most advanced form of human culture, in which the most advanced elements and the most advanced manifestation of a culture takes place. According to his thesis, there are 9 important civilizations right now existing in the world, and it is the struggle between these civilizations which will determine the shape of ideas and shape of world after particularly the post Cold War era. As you know, the Cold War ended in 1989, and America needed a new foreign policy ploy, a new foreign policy objective. So, this theory provided that, this clash of civilization idea provided that strategic edge to the American policymakers, strategic outlook. Now, so Huntington says that there is the Western civilization, there is Sinic or Chinese civilization, Japanese civilization, Indian civilization, Islamic civilization, Latin American civilization, and the Far Eastern civilization. So, these are the 9 civilizations in the world, and according to his thesis, Western civilization, which is represented most powerfully by the Americans, is at clash with the Islamic civilization. Similarly, he claims that, this is his analysis, that Sinic civilization or the Chinese civilization is at clash with the American civilization. And then he analyzes which civilization is more closer to another civilization. You might disagree with his analysis, you may not agree with some of his ideas, but he says that the struggle and the outcome of the future civilization of human civilization depends, world civilization depends upon a struggle and clash between these civilizations. And what he proposes that the Americans, they should guard and protect their Western values, and they should struggle and fight for it, and it is by fighting and protecting their values that the West and North Americans, they can dominate and maintain their leadership in the world. As far as the Islamic civilization is concerned, he claims that this civilization will continue to grow because of its demographic and population advantage. They will keep on influencing and shaping the world politics and world economy and world culture. Other important civilization according to Huntington is Hindu civilization or the Indian civilization. He says that India will also play a very important role in the future, in the post Cold War era, economically, politically. Similarly, he talks about the Chinese civilization and says that China will emerge as an economic. Now, you must keep in mind that he predicted these, wrote these things in 1993, when China was still an emerging and developing country. It was after 2000 that China became noticeable throughout the world. So, he predicted the strategy as systematic and steady rise of the Chinese power, and predicted that China will become an economic and political power in the world. So, through cultural, through conflict, through cultural competition, one civilization overpowering the other civilization, one civilization dominating the other civilization, the growth of the human history continues. So, this is the three perspectives which I wanted to tell you, and I'll take a short break, and then I'll be coming back and I'll discuss about the cultural flows. Thank you.